How do you know that you're really aware and awake? How do you know that for sure? How do you know that you actually know about non-duality and you actually live with the knowledge of non-duality? How do you actually know that? How can you be certain that it's not the ego just playing you? It's such an interesting conundrum because the sensory experiences you have that creates an experience of someone believing itself to exist as you that only happens because of your senses, because of how you see and hear and smell and taste and touch and all your thoughts. All those sensory experiences, they are collected by the brain, and then in the brain a meaning is created with it. So an opinion is created. So if you see a strawberry and you have seen a strawberry before, you know what it is because there's a comparison to the past. In that, someone believing itself to exist as you is created. And we have a lot of thoughts every single day that are repetitive. And that repetitive pattern gives us even more an identity of a thinker, or of a someone, of a you. A lot of the questions that I get is about people asking me, how do I know that I actually understand about non-duality? How do I know that I'm not just tricked? You know? And when I'm talking about non-duality, I think it's very important to include the sensory experiences that we have, the someone believing itself to exist as you. I think it's very important to keep that in the conversation. I do know that the non-duality is the void. It's where everything exists at the same time. So it's nothing and everything at the same time. I do know that that is non-duality, and I do know that there's no you, there's no I. I'm completely aware of that. However, all of us, you sitting and listening now, there's not a you listening, there's listening happening. But in your experience, it's experienced as you listening. And that's where the illusion comes in. And that is where we believe that there's someone as me sitting and listening. Just like I could believe that there's someone as me talking to someone. I only believe that because my sensory experiences have put up the computer, pressed play and record, and then I upload it to a medium, and then I have a feeling and an experience of that being true, of that happening. But it's only an experience. It's only in the illusion that there's an experience, because there's not really an I if you pick it apart. Anyways, I find it very important to talk about that sensory experience that belief says I. And I think it's very important not just to dismiss it with whatever concern you have. If you write me, why do I keep going back to all the emotions and all the feelings that are full of anxiety and full of fear, full of negativity? Why do I keep going back to that? It's not helpful if I just tell you, well, there is no you, just let it go. There's no you. It's not real. The thoughts are not real. It's not helpful, because to you, in your chemistry, it's very, very real. And the identification that we make with that chemistry is very, very real. That's why some people really for years and years and years can battle with an anxiety, can battle with depression, with PTSD, can battle with early childhood traumas. It's real because the chemistry is giving us the signals, and that those signals are creating a reality, a perceived reality around us, that it really, really feels depressed. For example, if you have a very low dopamine, you tend to develop depression. If you have very low serotonin, you tend to develop depression. And you probably heard people talk about it. It's like the world is without colors. Well, did you know that when you have low dopamine and low serotonin, the visual stimuli is different? You actually view with less colors. So it's not just them believing that there are less colors, that the sky is not as blue. It isn't as blue in their perception, because the chemicals needed for them to see the blue sky is not there. So I think it's very, very important to talk about the perceived reality when we talk about non-duality. Anyways, when I talk about non-duality and how we perceive the world, I usually put it into the dual being of the ego, which is the participant and the one that is experiencing everything, and the observer, which is the authentic, which is the one observing. And the issue that we have as human beings is that we are both at the same time, all the time. So you're both the rider and the horse at the same time. You are experiencing, but you can also be an observer. The issue with being the ego, or being the one that is experiencing everything, is that you're completely in the maze of emotions. So you're drowning in feelings. If you have an anxiety or depression, it feels real because you keep staying as the one experiencing. You are in the ego experiencing this. But there is a gap. I talk about that in other videos. There's a gap all the time where you can pull yourself out from being the one experiencing to be the observer, to be an anthropologist that is just observing what is going on. And there are lots of different meditations that you can do. I'm probably going to help you with some meditations at some point. If you search Vedana meditations, it's meditations where you sit and you notice whatever arises as comfortable, uncomfortable, or neutral. So you only observe it. You don't put any label on it saying it's uncomfortable because my leg is asleep or because I'm hungry. You don't do that. You just experience if it's comfortable, uncomfortable, or neutral. That is a way to practice to be the observer. But being the authentic or being the observer, you can pull yourself out all the time. Every situation you're in, you can pull yourself out so you're not in with the emotions. The chemistry might happen, but you will experience it as anger is happening. It's not I am angry. It is an anxiety is happening. It's not I got an anxiety. It is happening, and you can observe what is happening, or you can experience what is happening. If you experience, you are in the emotions. If you observe, then you are at a distance observing what is happening. So it's also important to emphasize that when you are in the observer, do not, if you want to observe, but you keep feeling, you know what I mean? You want to observe your anxiety, but you keep feeling it, or you want to observe your migraine, but you keep feeling it. Then instead of doing the spiritual bypassing where you say, no, I don't feel it, that's just a lie. You're gaslighting yourself. Instead, just acknowledge what is. That is part of the observer. It is that you have the agency to pull yourself out. And when you then feel something, for example, with a migraine, you feel the pain. You want to observe the pain, but you can't pull yourself out because with a migraine, it's the one point in this. There's only one thing in the world, and that is the migraine. What you can do is apply acceptance. It's what I call unconditional acceptance. That you apply that to the situation. So I have a hair in my. So what you do, you apply acceptance to the situation. So for example, let's say with a migraine, you have the pain and you keep feeling the pain. It's numbing. It's just there. You apply the acceptance with saying, I wish that I could just observe this, but right now I can do nothing but feeling it, and it's okay. If it's not okay, then you say, I wish it was okay. It's not okay, but it is how it is. So that's where you keep pulling yourself out of the feelings, and you keep reminding yourself of whatever is okay. That is the way that you can see if what you are experiencing right now, if you're in the ego or if you're in the observer. Because if you're in the ego, you want things to change. That is the one job of the ego. It's to find faults, and it wants things to change. Yes, This is what I have right now. I do not want it to be what I have right now. I want something else. That is the ego. In the observer, you don't have an opinion about it. You observe what is. It's daylight. You don't have an opinion about it. It is as it is. So even when you have feelings that you don't want, you acknowledge that you have feelings that you don't want, but you do not try to change it, and you have no wish to change it because you can't. You can't. It's only the ego that believes that it can change anything. And in honesty, you can't. The reason why the ego is so scared of accepting this, it is that the ego has this illusion about being able to control. You can't control anything. You can't control your thoughts. Your thoughts just come in and then they disappear again. You cannot control what you want to think of, and you cannot control how long the thought is going to stay there. You cannot control when a thought is when you want a thought to disappear. It just happens. Just like you can't control what you want to smell, you can't control how long you want to smell it, and you can't control when the smell is going to disappear. It just happens. The same with hearing, the same with tasting. If you take a bite of a lemon, you cannot decide when you want to taste the lemon. You just taste it. You cannot decide how it's going to influence you, your taste buds, and you can't decide for how long it's still gonna lingering in your taste buds. It's the same with the thought. The thoughts is a sense on equal terms with all the other thoughts. So when a thought is happening, it's just happening. It's without your control. You might now sit and think, oh, but I can decide if I want to think about an elephant. Yeah, then you might think about an elephant now, but you can't decide for how long you want to think about an elephant, or when you want to let go of the thought of an elephant. Just like if I say elephant, you cannot decide not to see an elephant for your inner eye, because it is what is happening and it's beyond your control. But the ego wants to believe that the ego is in control. It's not. You can't control anything. And the reason why the ego is so scared of really knowing that, it is that if I cannot control anything, then I could die at any point. And the ego does not want that. The ego really, really do not want to talk about death, and really do not want to talk about the impermanence of living. Whenever I say, we do get sick, we do get old, and we do die, there's always people that go like, yeah, but you can do something about that. And what I always reply was, no, you can't. No, you can't. You can be as healthy as you want to and be hit by a bus, Things happen. It's beyond your control. So, and that is super, super scary for the ego. The ego does not want to become aware. I mean, really aware of the impermanence of its existence. And that is where fear and anxiety steps in, and that is where you can get completely devolved in it. So you might think, okay, so far so good. A thought is just coming and thoughts are just disappearing. How am I supposed, to do that? And the thing is, you don't have to do anything, because thoughts are like, a cloud making a shadow on a lawn. It doesn't imprint itself on the lawn. The cloud just comes and the shadow is just there and the shadow disappears. Or if I take my hand through the air like this, it doesn't leave a mark at all. It's just a hand through the air. It's the same with your thoughts. That your thoughts, they just come and then they disappear. They leave no mark. They only leave a mark if you hang on to a thought. So let's say you have an anxiety and a thought comes into your mind that you then start to ruminate about. That thought will disappear. It only comes back because you decide to pick it up and take it back and ruminate some more. When you wake up during the night and you have thoughts going like that, if you leave your mind just doing its own, just going like that, then at some point it will exhaust itself. It can only continue when when a thought comes in and you identify with a thought and start to ruminate about it, start to pick it up and twist and turn it like a Rubik's Cube. Then a thought will leave a mark, but it's only because you picked it up. If you don't pick it up, then it will disappear. So let's say you're lying during the night and you have thoughts about an anxiety. Your breathing is you're hyperventilating, you're sweating, your pulse is high. You are in the midst of an anxiety. What you can do in that is just stay with it. Just breathe. Whatever thought you have, fear of death, just let it be. Don't try to push it away because it's there. As soon as you start to push it away, you give it power. And then you will hold on to it and it will start to make a mark. If it just comes in, if a fear of dying comes in and you allow it to be there, you're not doing anything than what is already happening. Do you see that? That I know that it might, be super scary to think about. But whatever is there no matter if you pick it up or not. The thought is there. If you are afraid of being fired from your job, but you don't want to talk about it because you're afraid that you're going to jinx it and then you're going to get fired from your job, it doesn't change the thought and the fear of being fired from your job. So it's only as soon as you try to push something away that you give it power, and then it's going to come back, again and again and again and again. If you allow it just to be there, it's okay. I can be in my body where I'm afraid of dying. I can be in my body. It's okay. I can be with me sitting here being afraid of dying. I can be with me afraid of losing my job. It's okay. I can be with me with the fear of losing my job. It's okay. Then you're not trying to push anything away. Whatever thought is there is allowed the space that is taking up anyway. So it's not that you're all of a sudden creating something that wasn't there. You're just acknowledging what is already there. So back to the initial question, how do you know that you're actually aware? How do you know that it's not just the ego playing a trick? Well, there's actually a few ways you can do it. Like I said, the ego is always comparing. The ego is always trying to look good. The ego always wants other people's acknowledgement. The ego is very much from the outside in. So for example, can you give to a homeless person without telling anyone? Even if the homeless person is lying there asleep, could you leave some money by the homeless person? Leave a sandwich and not tell anyone? Don't even tell the homeless person? Because if you do that, then the identifying with you is out of the equation. It's a random act of kindness that is giving, and it is just happening. It's not you doing it. It is just being done. It's just happening, and you are not in it. Or if somebody is talking about you horribly behind your back, can you just be with that? Can you just shrug your shoulders and go like, that's okay, it doesn't change anything. Whatever they believe about me has nothing to do with me. It's their beliefs. I am who I am. I don't identify with what they're talking about, so I have no need to change their opinion about me. They can say whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. It's about them. It's not about me at all. How could it be? They're only talking from their perception. It's not about me at all. If it was about you, then I could say you now have $1 million on your account, £1,000 available in your hand right now. It's not real. It's not real. Whatever people say, it's not real. So you know that you are fine with whatever other people say, and you are in a place where it doesn't matter. You don't identify with it when they say whatever. They can say whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. And another way you can see if you are in the observer, it's when you have a spontaneous um, response to things. So when somebody is saying something, you always initially know if you want to do it or don't want to do it. That is the authentic being present. As soon as you start to question it, or you start to doubt it, doubt is it's the in Buddhism, doubt is the second step or the second hook that we have in not achieving enlightenment. That is in Buddhism, but where we keep ourselves away from really understanding ourselves and really understanding reality. The second step in that tier, it's doubt. Because doubt is always putting a halt to whatever you want to do, or to whatever you think, or to whatever is going on in your life. Whenever you get doubt, you are like standing in your track and not knowing to go left or right. When you are in that position, the best way to get back to that, it's just to observe what is happening. Pull yourself out of the emotions, because doubt is speaking to the emotions. So that is speaking to the ego. And then you start to go on one side and the other hand, and then you are in the ego, because you believe that something is better than this. You believe that this is not, that is much better. So I want that. You want to make the right decision. That's so ego. That is so in the feelings, where you actually believe that whatever decision you make, it has a meaning. It doesn't have a meaning at all. All of this is an illusion anyway. So it doesn't have a meaning at all. It's more rewarding to be the observer in your life, but you're not gonna die later or better or be any happier or anything. So it's not about that. It's just about becoming aware. The last and the final way that you can see if you are aware and if you are authentic, it is that it doesn't matter. The question doesn't matter at all. Because if you are caught up in the ego, or if you're caught up or if you are really aware and you're really awake, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. So as soon as you know that it doesn't matter, then you're no longer in the one comparing. As soon as you compare, you're in the ego. So as when you don't compare anymore, and there's nothing better than anything else, then there's not the weighing of good and bad and right and wrong. Then you are in the authentic, and it doesn't matter. So again, I'm not talking about a spiritual bypassing. I'm talking about an exhale in you, where you feel that, yeah. I had a group session this Tuesday, where there was somebody afterwards writing in the group that all of a sudden it wasn't, she didn't identify with it anymore. It was like, it doesn't really matter. I could get angry, but I can't really be bothered about it. That's when you're in the authentic. That is like, yeah, I could get engaged, but can't really be bothered about it, so I don't. That's when when you're in the authentic, when you're in the observer. So I have received 2 questions I would like to talk about. The first one is Yasin, that is asking about if emotions that you're feeling are based on past experiences and traumas that you never could forgive yourself for. It's things you have done and you cannot let yourself go, and all that is bottled up, and then you're projecting it out to other people. How do you know that is really anger? And how do you, or if it's just a misinterpretation of how anger really feels, how do you know? And I hope, Yasin, that I have answered your question, because when anger is happening, when a feeling is happening, it's just an emotion happening. It's not you being angry. If you have had early childhood traumas, it was trauma happening. It was not happening to you. Let's say that you were beaten as a child. Then we have this idea as grown-ups that I was beaten as a child. But thing was, is if it hadn't been you, it would have been someone else. Let's say that it wasn't you, it was, Kurt. Then Kurt would have been beaten up instead of you. So it was never about you. It was never about you. You were just there. The one that you perceive yourself to be today was just there. And I am very much aware of how much pain early childhood trauma can inflict on us, and how much PTSD that we can have as adults, how the way we have shaped our entire lives, the way that we have connected with partners, the way that we have dealt with conflicts, the way that everything has panned out in our lives has been completely shaped by those traumas that we had as children. I'm very, very much aware of that. Where this knowledge is going to help you is when you can let it go in a way that you no longer identify with it. So you create space for the pain, and you create space for the experiences. But you also see that if I wasn't there, somebody else would have been there, for example, in my place, then exactly the same would have happened to that person. It was not something that I inflicted. It was not something that I was guilty of. It was not something that I did or did not do. I couldn't have done anything to avoid it because it wasn't about me. If any other person had been there, it would have happened to that other person. It just happened to me because I was there. And yes, that creates a lot of pain. And yes, it creates a lot of things which we then, like you say, lash out and react in ways and do things that are so difficult to forgive ourselves for. What I just talked about, where any feeling you have only leaves an impression if you identify with it and if you keep picking it up. Because if you have a feeling of failure, let's say, or a feeling of regret, regret will arise. And you might think of things that happen where you feel regret towards what you did. If you can create space for that emotion being there, then that feeling will disappear again. See, like the cloud that is creating a shadow on the lawn without leaving an impression. Let the regret arise and let it disappear when it's done being there. And then you create space for what is. You do not try to push it away or be anyone else than who you actually are. I hope that is helping you, Yasin. Another question I got is from Chain that is asking, I'm enjoying really good days where I'm present. It feels like a gentle falling, and then I go to sleep. And when I wake up, it's like my ego is back. My mind keep going back into the rumination and all of that. And I wrote an answer to you, but I would like to make a video to you as well. What I just talked about with the identifying of the ego, that is what is happening. The issue for you is that you are identifying with the feelings that the ego gives. And the ego, the only job the ego have is to find faults. And the ego is going to keep finding faults, keep pointing out faults about you, about things you didn't do or did do. It's going to keep doing that. The only way that you give it power is either to pick it up and ruminate about it, or to try to push it away. Those two actions are the same. Those two actions give equally much impression into the thought. If you instead wake up and you have this dark cloud hanging over you, and you just stay with you, observe what is happening. You don't have to be the participant where you are in it and you ruminate and you think, oh my goodness, what I'm going to do now. But you just stay with the feeling that is there. And then you feel, right now I'm ruminating. Okay, can I create space for me right now to be a person that is ruminating? Not try to change anything, but just creating space to what already is. Can I do that? And either it's a yes, I can, or it's a no, I want this to go away right away. Okay, can I create space to not accepting what is right now? And that way, even when the ego is present and you are ruminating and you're fearful and you're full of regret or whatever it is, whatever you feeling you have when you wake up and you feel its hooks, it's not threatening anymore because it's okay for it to be there. It doesn't need to go away. The only reason why the ego is so persistent is that when the ego goes away, you will become aware of your impermanence. You will become aware that none of this is real. You will become aware of that you have no control over anything. Things are happening, and if you think it's a good thing, that's because of your perception. If you think it's a bad thing, that's because of your perception. So as soon as you don't identify on that level, things are just happening. And that's fine. It's happening anyway. The suffering happens when you refuse what is happening, you know? It's daylight. I don't want it to be daylight. I want it to be nighttime. That suffering is something I'm sitting and creating. I can't argue with reality, It's daylight. So whatever emotion comes up, it's just an emotion. You don't need to believe it. You don't need to latch onto it. You can just allow it to be there and it will disappear again. It only stays if you identify with it or if you refuse to have it. I actually think that was everything I wanted to say today. So I wish you and yours all the best.